Welcome back to the Pro Ticker Deep Dive. We are jumping into one of the most consistently high growth, yet I think fundamentally misunderstood sectors of the global economy, the global cybersecurity market.
Yeah.
This isn't just about software upgrades anymore. It's now woven into the core infrastructure of every company on Earth. It's a critical, non-discretionary global spending priority that is absolutely essential for every single digital transformation initiative happening right now.
It really is. You could almost call it the ultimate insurance policy for the digital age. And our mission today is, well, it's ambitious. We need to cut through this incredible amount of data and noise surrounding the market to, synthesize its true size and momentum. We're going to identify precisely which subsectors are just exploding with growth, analyze the major macro forces, things like the AI arms race, accelerating regulation, and intensifying geopolitics that are driving all this spending, and finally provide a clear outlook on the massive consolidation, the M&A, and the investment trends you really need to track across the short, medium, and long term.
And when we talk about scale, I think we have to start right there. We need to establish the sheer magnitude of the investment here. These are not niche numbers. Global spending on cybersecurity, which covers software, hardware, and crucially services, is projected to hit a range of about, $213 billion to $240 billion in 2025?
That's the range, yeah. And that's just the starting point. What's absolutely crucial for you to understand is the growth trajectory. This market isn't just large today, it's relentlessly, secularly expanding. And its growth is, for the most part, non-cyclical. Gartner forecasts that total security spending will grow about 10 to 12% annually, which consistently, year after year, outpaces general IT spending across the board.
Right. And that consistent decade-long expansion leads to some truly staggering long-term projections. We're talking about a market that is expected to roughly double by 2029, reaching $323 billion. And some analysts, like the team at IDC, are even more bullish. They're predicting it'll hit an astonishing $377 billion by 2028. So whether you take the more conservative estimate or the broader ones, the key takeaway is the same, right?
It is. Cybersecurity is an unstoppable tailwind. It's being driven by these twin forces of perpetual, ever-evolving cyber threats and the ongoing accelerated digitization of, every aspect of global commerce and government.
Okay, so let's dig into that resilience. Section 1, the resilient market and global spending power.
The term secular growth in tech gets thrown around a lot, almost casually. But in the case of cybersecurity, it is fundamental to the entire investment thesis. For decades, so much of IT spending was genuinely discretionary. If an economic tightening occurred, a company could, defer replacing a server rack or delay rolling out a new ERP system. That model, as you hinted at, has just completely evaporated for security.
And how transformative is that reframing, though? Is it fair to say that moving security from a simple cost center to a non-discretionary operational requirement is the single most important shift for an investor to grasp?
It's absolutely the core insight. Think about it this way. We're seeing data showing that security spending is now roughly 4 to 5% of overall corporate IT spending. And that percentage is climbing. Why? Because organizations cannot afford to cut security deeply even when they're facing significant short-term economic headwinds or, cautious budget environments. The risk calculus has fundamentally changed. The cost of a successful breach in terms of fines, reputational damage, operational downtime, stock market impact, it now vastly outweighs the cost of the security controls needed to prevent it.
So if I'm a CIO, I might delay hiring 3 developers, but I absolutely cannot delay patching a 0-day vulnerability that just dropped from my email server. That's the real-world application of non-discretionary.
Precisely. And Gartner highlights 4 critical factors that guarantee security spending stays strong in the medium to long term, regardless of GDP growth. First, there are the rising threats. The attack surface is simply getting larger and more sophisticated. It just is. Second, higher defense budgets. Governments worldwide, especially in NATO, are earmarking more money for national cyber resilience. Third, increasing regulatory pressure, which we'll get into in more detail later, but which effectively mandates spending. You have no choice. And fourth, and this is crucial, better cyber awareness. This now extends far beyond the Fortune 500. It's reaching even small and mid-sized businesses, the SMBs, who are now finally aware they are targets. So this collective shift means cybersecurity is now viewed as an operational necessity, fundamental to protecting every single revenue stream in digital initiative.
Okay, so let's talk about where all this money is being spent. When we look at where this $250 billion market is concentrated, the map is, it's heavily skewed toward the established digitized economies. The United States and Western Europe together account for a massive over 70% of global security spending in 2025.
And that dominance makes sense. It's logical because these are the areas with the deepest digitization, the most complex regulatory environments, and frankly, the largest, most valuable enterprises,
Hmm.
which just makes them the biggest targets. The US is naturally the largest single market. It's driven by its enormous enterprise base and critically huge government investments. Specifically, you have these federal mandates around zero trust architecture that are forcing wholesale technology replacement. Western Europe is also a huge player, but their spending is often dictated more by stringent, unifying EU regulations, coupled with this rapidly escalating awareness of state-sponsored threats originating from neighboring regions.
But the story isn't just about the volume of spending. It's also about velocity. While North America dominates in sheer size, the fastest percentage increases are actually coming from emerging markets. Regions like Latin America, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and Africa are all seeing the fastest proportional growth rates.
Exactly. They are, in a sense, playing catch up. They're rapidly modernizing their infrastructure and they're immediately recognizing the security imperative. They're starting from a lower base, of course, but the demand curve is extremely steep. And that leads to higher year-over-year percentage growth rates as both governments and businesses there bolster their foundational defensive capabilities.
And we really have to talk about the two regions that play an incredibly unique, almost contradictory role in this global cyber landscape. First up, China.
China is a fascinating case. It's a huge, rapidly growing domestic market, but it's one that is almost entirely insulated from foreign competition. Their updated cybersecurity law in 2025 is a key policy driver here. It tightens compliance requirements for, well, virtually every domestic company and raises the penalties for non-compliance significantly. This creates a massive captive market for domestic Chinese vendors like Huawei and others.
So it's essentially a bifurcated global market. You have the global West operating under one set of rules, and then you have China, which is large enough to sustain its own parallel domestic ecosystem, which I assume limits the total addressable market for U.S. and Israeli vendors, even as the Chinese market itself grows overall.
Exactly right. Then you have the other unique case, Israel. Despite its tiny population, Israel plays an incredibly outsized role in global cybersecurity innovation. This is due to a unique pipeline. The talent development is centered on mandatory military service, particularly the elite intelligence units like the IDF's Unit 8200, which acts as this powerful incubator. This system generates entrepreneurs and technologies that are, for all intents and purposes, battle-tested before they even enter the commercial market.
And because their domestic market is so small, their private sector has to be fundamentally export-oriented, right? Their startups are designed to compete globally from day one, which must be why they attract such massive global VC funding. The scale is just disproportionate. In 2025, Israeli cyber firms raised, what, $4.4 billion? That's almost half the total VC funding raised in the entire United States, a country 35 times its size. It really is the startup nation for cyber, influencing innovation far beyond its own borders.
It's an innovation engine unlike any other in the world for this sector, so that gives you the macro picture. Now, we should probably transition from those spending trends to the microtechnology trends. Where's all this capital actually flowing?
Yeah, let's drill down into the areas seeing the steepest growth and maybe what specific painful customer problems these solutions are actually solving.
Okay, so if you are looking for pure velocity, you look no further than the cloud. Cloud security subsegments are, statistically, the #1 and #2 fastest growing security categories right through 2029. They are responding directly to the massive global shift of workloads off of on-premise servers.
And within that massive cloud migration, the hyperscale growth segments are incredibly specific. We're not just talking about securing the network to the cloud, we are talking about securing the environment inside the cloud. Specifically, Cloud Security Posture Management, or CSPM, is forecast to grow about 31% annually. And Cloud Access Security Brokers, CASBs, are growing around 25% annually.
Right, and that 31% growth in CSPM is underpinned by, well, perhaps the most shocking and urgent statistic in the entire industry. Gartner famously noted that through 2025, 99% of all cloud breaches will stem from customer misconfigurations. I want to emphasize that. 99%.
Wow, that's stunning. That means the cloud provider, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're doing their job. They're securing the underlying infrastructure.
Yeah.
But the customer is failing at setting up simple things like storage buckets or access roles or permissions correctly.
Yeah.
It's like buying a vault but leaving the door
It
unlocked.
is exactly like that. The breach isn't happening because the provider failed. It's happening because a developer left a storage bucket public or a database access key was exposed somewhere. CSPM tools are designed specifically to continuously monitor thousands of cloud settings across multi-cloud environments, AWS, Azure, GCP, and automatically find and fix those dangerous configuration gaps. The sheer magnitude of that 99% risk guarantees sustained, non-negotiable investment in CSPM.
And this cloud adoption, coupled with the permanent shift to remote and hybrid work, it's just completely dissolved the traditional network perimeter. If your employees and your data are everywhere, the old castle and moat security model it's dead. Which is why we're seeing this rapid shift to converged network and security platforms known as Secure Access Service Edge
Okay.
and its security component, Security Service Edge, SEC.
SE is essentially the full consolidation of network delivery and security functions. So things like firewalls, CAB, and Zero Trust Network Access, ZTNA, but all delivered as a single, unified cloud service. It's security for a perimeterless world.
And this strategic importance is driving staggering M&A activity. Leaders here include Zscaler and Netskope, who were early pioneers in cloud proxy and SSE solutions.
Right.
But the strategic importance was really cemented by the sheer financial muscle involved in major acquisitions. I mean, we saw the news of Google's announced $32 billion acquisition of Wiz, which is one of the largest cyber acquisitions ever contemplated.
And that specific deal highlights the strategic complexity. Google already has its own native security tools, but Wiz excels at multi-cloud visibility and posture management. For Google, acquiring Wiz is about bridging the complexity that's inherent in enterprises running workloads across AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. It's a capability grab. It shows the major cloud providers view deep multi-cloud security features as absolutely critical for attracting and retaining the biggest enterprise cloud customers. The platform wars are being fought over who can provide the best, most integrated, and simplest security experience.
Okay, so while cloud is the fastest growing segment, we have to recognize that endpoint protection remains the largest single category by sheer revenue. It's the foundational layer, right? Estimated at around $13.5 billion in 2023 and growing significantly to $29 billion by 2029.
That robust growth really reflects how the attack surface has expanded. With remote and hybrid work cementing the device, the laptop, the server, the phone as the new perimeter, the endpoint is now the primary entry vector for threats. We see the consequences of that. Ransomware attacks spiked 149% year over year in early 2025, and these attacks, they overwhelmingly begin via a compromised endpoint.
The technology has radically evolved, thankfully. We've moved well beyond legacy antivirus, which just looked for known signatures. The modern approach is next-generation EPP, endpoint protection platforms, and the far more advanced EDR, or endpoint detection and response solutions.
A good way to think of it is this. Traditional antivirus was like putting a lock on the door. EDR is like installing 247 security cameras and motion sensors inside the house. These EDR platforms use behavioral AI and machine learning to detect fileless or zero-day attacks threats that rely on anomalous user or system behavior, not just looking for a known malicious file. And this endpoint telemetry is now integrating into broader extended detection and response XDR systems, correlating data across the endpoint, the network, and the cloud for a much more holistic view.
In terms of the market titans, the competition here is a really high-stakes battle. On one side, you have CrowdStrike, the cloud-native market leader. Their Falcon platform has been a phenomenal growth engine, surpassing $3.4 billion in annual recurring revenue, or ARR, by early 2024. And that ARR figure signals a massive recurring and loyal customer base.
It does. And on the other side, you have the powerful Goliaths like Microsoft. They leverage their ubiquitous Windows footprint and deep integration to make Defender a top-tier endpoint suite. And it's often bundled into their M365 subscriptions. That bundling strategy puts relentless pressure on the pure-play competitors, forcing them to innovate constantly just to justify their standalone price tag.
We also have to track competitors like SentinelOne, another high-growth EDR provider. Their financial journey has been really instructive. Following that massive investor pivot toward fiscal discipline, they publicly focused on controlling costs and achieved a major financial milestone by claiming non-GAAP break-even in FY 2025. This signals to the market that even in this high-growth space, efficiency and a clear path to sustainable profitability are now being rewarded. It's a direct response to changing investor sentiment.
Absolutely, and that intense focus on securing the device naturally leads us directly to the concept that secures the user on that device. Identity and access management, or IAM. IAM manages user identities, authentication, permissions. It's so critical because credential theft, stolen passwords, misuse access keys. It remains the single largest cause of major data breaches.
And this isn't just an important segment. IAM is the central, indispensable pillar of the entire Zero Trust security model. If you adopt Zero Trust, the idea that you trust nothing and verify everything, your identity management system has to be perfect. The Zero Trust IAM market is sizable, around $38 billion in 2025, and it's tracking to double by 2030. This spending is no longer seen as an optional project. It is core infrastructure.
And the key players really define the landscape here. Okta has been a major disruptor, pioneering cloud-based identity solutions for both workforce login and customer identity. CyberArk remains the undisputed leader in privileged access management, or PAIN-M, which is essential for safeguarding those keys to the kingdom, like system admin credentials and cloud access tokens. And of course, Microsoft is a ubiquitous force with Azure AD, now rebranded as Entra ID, due to its deep integration across the O365 ecosystem. The level of M&A here, with private equity firms like Thoma Bravo acquiring firms like Ping Identity and ForgeRock, it just underscores the non-negotiable strategic value of controlling the digital keys to the organization.
Okay, so shifting now to network security. This is a highly mature segment, traditionally dominated by physical firewall appliances, but it's still massive. It's rising from roughly $21.3 billion in 2024. And like endpoint security, it's being dragged, kicking and screaming, into the cloud age.
It really is. The evolution here involves firewalls being refactored into software and cloud services, the firewall as a service, and SASE models we talked about earlier. The incumbents, the traditional firewall giants, have had to adapt or face, well, obsolescence.
Right. The leaders Palo Alto Networks, Fortinet, Cisco, and Check Point have been forced to transition into these integrated platform vendors. Palo Alto Networks, PAN-W, has executed this platform strategy exceptionally well, blending its next-gen firewalls with cloud solutions like Prisma Cloud and SASE with Prisma Access. And this successful transition has powered robust financial health, pushing PAN-W's fiscal 2025 revenue to $9.2 billion. Meanwhile, Fortinet is known for blending networking and security at a massive scale, often with excellent price performance, making it really popular in the mid-market and increasingly in operational technology sectors.
And that platform shift naturally raises an important question for you, the listener. Who runs these complex systems? Which brings us to the human element and the colossal problem it represents. The talent shortage, which is driving enormous spending on managed detection and response, or MDR, services.
That shortage is arguably the single greatest structural challenge facing the entire industry. As of 2025, the global cyber workforce gap hit an estimated 4.8 million unfilled roles. That leaves countless organizations, especially smaller or mid-sized ones, without the 247 internal staff they need for constant vigilance.
And so security services overall, including MDR and consulting, form the largest portion of cyber spending, estimated at $84 billion globally in 2025. MDR has surged precisely because it is the outsourced, scalable solution. It is the human side of cybersecurity that bridges that critical 4.8 million person gap.
So MDR is a step up from the older managed security services, MSS. It doesn't just manage the firewall. It focuses on proactive threat hunting, deep investigation, and incident remediation. Companies like CrowdStrike with Falcon Complete, Google Mandiant, and SecureWorks are major players. This service offers force multiplication. It gives organizations instant access to deep expertise and helps them operate a high-tech security stack without having to hire 3 full-time, highly paid analysts they can't find anyway. We expect MDR demand to remain extremely high for the next decade.
And finally, we have to detail a sector that has rapidly escalated from a niche to an absolute necessity. Operational technology, OT, and industrial control systems, ICS, security. This is the specialized area focused on securing physical systems, power grids, oil and gas pipelines, manufacturing floors, transportation networks.
This is where the risks become physical and, frankly, potentially catastrophic. The convergence of traditional air-gapped OT networks with corporate IT networks means these physical systems are now exposed to global cyber risks. We saw the potential for physical chaos, dramatically illustrated by incidents like the Stuxnet attack in 2010, which physically damaged Iranian centrifuges, and more recently the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in 2021, which resulted in panic buying of gasoline across the U.S. East Coast. Those attacks made OT security a front-page national security issue.
Right. And governments globally responded by rapidly tightening regulations. You have examples like the US TSA rules for pipelines and the EU's NIS2 directive, which explicitly covers essential industries like energy, transport, and water. This regulatory muscle is driving mandatory spending. The industrial cybersecurity market is already valued at a staggering $93.7 billion in 2025, and it's projected for steady growth toward $135 billion by 2029.
And this requires specialized solutions. Vendors like Dragos and Nozomi networks are essential here, offering network monitoring tailored to specific, unique industrial protocols like Modbus and DNP3. Even the general security vendors are adapting, with giants like Palo Alto and Fortinet introducing specialized, ruggedized firewalls designed for these demanding industrial environments. OT security is a key, non-discretionary growth area driven by the need to secure the physical reality of our modern world.
So we've detailed the market size and the specific technologies gaining traction. Now, let's zoom out to understand the three major interconnected macro forces that are guaranteeing that cybersecurity spending remains robust across every single one of these segments, regardless of the technological flavor.
First up has to be the AI arms race. AI is not just a feature anymore, it's a cross-cutting trend that defines the future of cyber defense. But we need to view it as a dual-natured force, right? It's both exponentially augmenting human defenders and being weaponized with terrifying efficiency by the threat actors.
Exactly. On the defensive side, AI and machine learning are now mandatory for spotting anomalies, reducing alert fatigue, and prioritizing the tsunami of data generated by EDR and cloud logs. The current evolution, from 2023 to 2025, centers heavily on generative AI tools. Think of tools like Microsoft Security Copilot. It doesn't replace the analyst, but it assists less experienced analysts by automating rote tasks, synthesizing complex incident reports, and providing plain language summaries of what's happening in the Security Operations Center, or the SOC.
And that dramatically enhances the efficiency of an often overwhelmed SOC, addressing that talent shortage from a productivity angle. The sheer investment flowing into this is why the market growth projection is so explosive. The global AI-driven cyber market is projected to skyrocket from approximately $34 billion in 2025 to over $230 billion by 2032. I mean, that's a staggering 31.7% compound annual growth rate, CAGR.
It is, but here is the challenge. The threat side is adapting faster than many anticipate. Attackers are using generative AI to craft vastly more convincing, large-scale phishing emails. They're grammatically perfect, contextually relevant, and scalable. They're also automating vulnerability discovery. This dynamic has created a true reactive AI arms race, which pressures organizations to adopt new AI-driven defenses simply to counter the sophisticated AI-augmented attacks that they are already facing today.
And this isn't just theory about the future. It's driving massive capital allocation right now. We see this acutely in hotbeds of innovation like Israel. A remarkable 64% of all cyber startup funding in 2025 went to companies operating at the AI-cyber intersection. This means that if your endpoint, cloud, or SIEM platform doesn't have a cutting-edge AI layer, you are already falling behind. AI is rapidly becoming the non-negotiable benchmark for differentiation.
Right. And the second massive driver is the geopolitical environment. This has fundamentally elevated cybersecurity from a simple IT governance problem to a frontline national security priority for every major government and large corporation.
State-sponsored attacks have escalated dramatically, often tied directly to conflicts. The Russia-Ukraine war provided a real-time global test case. Russia deployed waves of highly sophisticated cyber attacks against Ukraine's critical infrastructure, including government, energy, and telecom sectors, with clear evidence of global spillover effects.
But it's not just warfare, it's economic warfare and espionage. Western governments frequently attribute these large-scale espionage campaigns targeting intellectual property, high-tech secrets, defense blueprints. They attribute them to state actors, often linked to groups operating out of China, North Korea, or Iran. This heightening of the nation-state threat drives increased government cyber defense budgets globally. The U.S. Department of Defense, NATO allies, and other major powers are now earmarking significant, stable portions of their defense spending for cyber resiliency, secure communications, and threat intelligence.
So what does this mean for the private sector? This geopolitical risk immediately translates into private sector demand for specialized high-assurance defenses. Companies in high-tech manufacturing, telecom, finance, critical infrastructure, they all need robust, state-of-the-art defenses, secure comms, advanced EDR, XDR, immediate incident response services to guard against state-sponsored espionage and sabotage. The pervasive fear of cyber warfare and state hacking is a massive, sustained demand driver that simply isn't going to disappear.
It won't. And if the threat escalation and geopolitical tensions are the sticks pushing the market, then regulation is the mandatory floor that guarantees the market's stability and consistent growth. Compliance pressures are intensifying globally, creating a non-negotiable need for specific security controls.
And Europe is really leading this regulatory charge with a highly stringent framework. The NIS2 directive, which became effective in 2024, dramatically expands mandatory cybersecurity measures. It now covers a huge array of essential and important entities, including digital providers, energy infrastructure, health, and transport.
And critically, NIS2 comes with teeth. It standardizes high financial penalties up to 10 million or 2% of global turnover for compliance failures. This forces CEOs and board members across Europe to prioritize immediate investment. They are also pushing the Cyber Resilience Act, which will enforce security by design requirements. This means if you manufacture a digital product and sell it in the EU, you will be legally required to build security in, rather than selling a product and trying to bolt on security later. That creates a new mandatory market for secure development lifecycle tools.
Meanwhile, the United States is getting equally aggressive, focusing specifically on corporate governance. The landmark 2023 SEC disclosure rules for public companies are forcing cyber risk firmly onto the board agenda, and it's changing how companies react in real time.
These rules are game-changing. They require public companies to report material cybersecurity incidents within a terrifyingly tight deadline. 4 business days of determining the material impact via an 8K filing. 4 days is an incredibly brief timeline for a complex, unfolding security incident.
That timeline must fundamentally change internal reporting structures. It forces companies to drastically improve their incident detection readiness, their forensic capabilities, and their internal governance processes. They need automated tools to assess materiality and report rapidly. Furthermore, these rules mandate that companies must now describe their cyber risk management and board oversight in annual reports, meaning executives are now directly liable for governance failures. And that fear of liability drives spending on governance, risk, and compliance tools.
Exactly. And this mandatory floor is truly global. We see other aggressive mandates like India's 6-hour incident reporting timeline, which is even tighter than the SEC's. So regulation effectively forces organizations to buy and implement specific security controls, audits, and reporting capabilities. Whether it's NIS2, SEC rules, or updated laws in Asia, compliance is now a mandatory spending priority worldwide, ensuring the market's resilience.
Okay, so we've established the incredible growth drivers. Now let's analyze the structure of the market itself, which is undergoing a rapid, almost violent transformation driven by an unprecedented M&A frenzy.
Consolidation is the defining structural trend of the mid-2020s. 2025 shattered records for deal activity, with cybersecurity M&A deal value reaching $96 billion across 400 transactions. That's a 270% year-over-year increase. This level of activity signals a fundamental re-rating of capabilities across the sector. We saw 8 mega deals over $1 billion in that year alone.
And this M&A wave is being powered by 2 main groups. First, you have strategic buyers who are desperate to acquire capabilities and, critically, reduce tool sprawl for their customers. The $32 billion Google acquisition of Wiz, focused on multi-cloud, is one example. But perhaps even more telling is the $28 billion acquisition of Splunk by Cisco. There, Cisco is buying data and security analytics dominance, using Splunk to secure the data fabric of the modern enterprise alongside its own networking dominance.
Right, and we cannot ignore the second major driver, private equity or PE. Firms like Thoma Bravo are engaging in these strategic roll-ups. They acquired multiple public identity firms like Ping Identity and ForgeRock, taking that supply off the public markets. Their clear strategy is to consolidate these specialized assets, which are sticky, and generate predictable, recurring revenue into unified, leaner platforms, streamline costs, and then eventually re-IPO the combined entity for a much higher multiple, capitalizing on that platform premium.
And the result of all this M&A is the rise of the platform winner takes a larger share dynamic. Customers are just overwhelmed. They suffer from debilitating tool sprawl. They might have 50 or 60 different security vendors. That leads to too many separate consoles, too much integration headache, and too many unmanaged gaps between the tools.
So now customers are actively seeking integrated security platforms, SaaS, XDR, unified identity platforms, and that greatly benefits the leaders like Palo Alto Networks, Microsoft, and CrowdStrike. This forces smaller, point solution vendors to face an existential choice. Either innovate at a blistering speed and become best of breed in an undeniable niche, or seek acquisition before their technology becomes fully commoditized by the platform giants.
But wait, isn't there still a huge demand for best-of-breed solutions? If an integrated platform is only, say, 80% as good as a specialized vendor like CyberArk and PAM, aren't the most security mature companies still going to choose the best-of-breed specialist?
That's a crucial distinction. Yes, the Global 2000s still rely on specialized best-of-breed players, especially in critical areas like PAM with CyberArk or vulnerability management with Tenable and Qualys. However, the trend is that the platform vendors are rapidly closing that capability gap. And for 90% of the market, the simplicity and the unified data layer offered by an integrated platform outweigh the marginal technical advantage of a point solution. The market is consolidating. That consolidation pressure is immense, making pure play specialists, even successful ones, permanent acquisition targets for the platform builders.
Okay, so moving to financial trends, we have to address the fundamental change in investor psychology. Following the frothy growth-at-all-costs valuations of 2021, the market pivoted sharply in 2022 and 2023. Investors are no longer rewarding companies purely for high revenue growth. They were demanding demonstrable profitability and strong cash flow.
The financial mantra that now dictates valuations in the software sector is the rule of 40. A company's revenue growth rate plus its profit margin should equal 40% or more. This is the new financial baseline. The industry celebrated when Palo Alto Networks delivered its first GAAP profit. That was a definitive market signal. It proved that a leading growth cyber company could successfully scale its platform business and achieve sustainable, generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP financial health. And that drove a significant stock jump.
So this focus on capital efficiency has created a massive valuation bifurcation. Companies that can efficiently land and expand their services and demonstrate high customer lifetime value, like CrowdStrike and Zscaler, they're rewarded with premium multiples. Their platform models prove high customer stickiness and favorable unit economics.
Conversely, we see companies that are unprofitable or heavily reliant on legacy, on-premise products struggling. They risk activist investor involvement, like the pressure we saw placed on Rapid7 to improve margins. Or, as we noted, they become prime targets for private equity buyouts, where costs are cut aggressively to generate immediate profit and cash flow. Sentinel-One's public pivot to focus on margin improvement and achieving that non-GAAP break-even is a direct, necessary response to this unforgiving investor demand for efficiency.
Okay, so looking ahead, say, a decade or more, the industry isn't just dealing with today's threats. It's grappling with two major, almost existential long-term wildcards that guarantee spending well into the future.
The first one is the colossal quantum computing threat. This is the technological boogeyman that keeps cryptographers up at night.
And for good reason.
For very good reason. Experts predict that within 10 to 15 years, fully operational quantum computers could break prevalent foundational cryptography standards like RSA and ECC. If they succeed, every secure transaction, every VPN tunnel, every encrypted database built on today's standards could theoretically be unlocked. This isn't just a technical glitch, it would be a seismic event, a potential Y2K moment for the entire sector, requiring a massive, costly global migration to new post-quantum cryptography, or PQC, standards, guided by bodies like NIST.
That is a massive guaranteed revenue stream for the future. I mean, every large organization, government, and financial institution will need to replace every key, every digital certificate, every encryption module. This guarantees massive investment in encryption and key management upgrades across every sector for a decade leading up to that quantum tipping point.
And the second wildcard is the evolution of autonomous security. Today, AI assists analysts. A decade from now, AI will evolve into autonomous security systems that don't just alert, but actively hunt, contain, and remediate threats at machine speed. The long-term battle will largely be defined as a perpetual machine versus machine cyber conflict, where defenders and attackers are constantly escalating their autonomous capabilities against each other.
That shift has profound implications. It necessitates developing strong, ethical, and control frameworks to ensure human oversight isn't lost. We also anticipate cybersecurity becoming even more pervasive, merging seamlessly with physical safety engineering. For instance, securing autonomous vehicles from remote hijacking is as much a life safety issue as it is a data issue, expanding the scope of the industry well beyond traditional IT hardware and software.
Absolutely. So for investors who want diversified exposure to this resilient, growth-heavy sector without the risk of picking single stocks, cybersecurity-focused exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, are an essential vehicle. We see three major players dominating the space, and each one offers a slightly different strategy.
Okay, so first, there is HHCK, the ETFMG Amplify Cybersecurity ETF. This is the original cyber ETF, launched way back in 2014. It takes a broad, relatively equal-weighted approach designed to capture the entire spectrum of the industry.
Right, and its unique strategic difference is that its holdings include not just pure-play cyber firms, but also large defense contractors like General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman. And why include defense firms? Because exposure to the government and defense budget is seen as a stable, long-term, secular driver, offering a different risk profile than just pure enterprise software firms. It provides that exposure to the global escalation of government cyber spending.
Then you have CIBR, the first trust NASDAQ cybersecurity ETF, which is the largest by assets under management, or AUM, often hovering around $11 billion. CIBR operates under a liquidity-weighted index, meaning it concentrates more heavily in the top, most liquid, and highest-performing platform names like Palo Alto Networks, CrowdStrike, and Cisco.
Yeah, and CIBR's mandate often includes large-cap IT services firms like Infosys due to the size of their security services business, making it slightly broader than a pure software index. CIBR's concentration in those top-performing platform leaders meant that in 2025, it generally outperformed HAC, returning about 13.5%, reflecting the market's premium valuation for those platform winners.
And finally, there is BOG, the Global X Cybersecurity ETF. BIG is strictly a pure play focus. It explicitly excludes defense contractors and conglomerates to concentrate solely on dedicated cybersecurity companies. This focus often gives it a more mid-cap tilt, including high-growth specialists like CyberArk, Tenable, and Qualys. So investors who want to avoid the potential drag or distraction of defense spending or broader IT services exposure often choose BOG for its highly focused strategy. But despite the different strategies, all three have high overlap on core holdings like CrowdStrike, Fortinet, and Palo Alto Networks, ensuring you capture the sector's dominant leaders.
They do. This has been a truly comprehensive look at the cybersecurity market, synthesizing the drivers, the technology shifts, and the competitive landscape.
And the conclusions are stark and clear. This is one of the most dynamic, necessary, and I think investable sectors in technology today. We summarize the key takeaways one last time.
I'd say number one, cybersecurity is now a non-discretionary operational expense. It's mandated by threat escalation and regulation, giving the sector a unique and robust resilience against typical economic cycles. Number two, the market is rapidly consolidating around integrated platforms covering cloud, zero trust, and XDR. This is driven by record-breaking M&A and investor demand for efficiency, forcing customers to choose fewer, more comprehensive vendors. And three, the convergence of the AI arms race, intense geopolitics, and stringent global regulation like NIS2 and the SEC rules guarantees sustained, robust, double-digit growth for the foreseeable future.
That brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on. Given the emergence of this AI arms race, where both attackers and defenders are rapidly deploying sophisticated self-learning models, will the long-term future of cybersecurity truly be defined not by human skill or governance frameworks or even board oversight, but by whether our autonomous AI defense agents can consistently outsmart the autonomous AI hacking agents without any human intervention?
And what implications does a perpetual machine versus machine cyber conflict hold for global stability, for economic resilience, and critically, for human oversight when these systems are fighting and remediating at speeds we simply cannot comprehend?
Something to ponder as you look at your next security update. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. See you all in the next Pro Ticker Deep Dive.